Today is operations of functions. Function operation is a way to simplify. We'll see if I can write this in. Simplify two or more expressions. So to make a new function. So if you look, we have f of x plus g of x or f plus g of x. They mean the same thing. That is add the two expressions of f and g together and simplify. And same thing, we have f of x minus g of x, or f minus g of x. This would be subtract. Maybe I'll try writing it in cursive here. I'm not sure which works better. Subtract the two expressions of f and g together and simplify. F of x times g of x, or f times g of x, is multiply the two expressions of f and g together and simplify. And then f of x divided by g of x, or f divided by g of x, is divide. Divide the two expressions of f of g together and simplify. So, something you need to know. F and g are just labels of functions. They're just labels. F and g are labels of functions. And then something else to know. I'm just going to write it over here. F plus g of x is not f of x plus g of x times x. So if you look, like you see all of these, f of x, g of x, f of g of x. That x there is just telling you that the variable involved is x in the function. It's not saying it's multiplied by x, so make sure you keep that straight. So we're going to look at some examples. For 1 and 2, we have f of x is 4x and g of x is equal to x squared plus 3x minus 1. And so we're going to work through these problems. So f of x plus g of x, or f plus g of x, they mean the same thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to rewrite it as 4x for f of x plus g of x is x squared plus 3x minus 1. And we're just going to solve it. So the way we solve it is we combine like terms, 4x and 3x. That makes 7x. And we need to put it in standard form. So standard form means the x squared term goes first. And then the minus 1 goes last. So we get x squared plus 7x minus 1. Now we're going to use the same values for f of x and g of x on number 2. So we have f of x minus 3 times g of x. So our f of x is still 4x. But then we have minus 3, and then we want to plug in g of x. X squared plus 3x minus 1. And so now before we combine like terms, I'm going to simplify this right hand side. So negative 3 times x squared is negative 3x squared minus 9x plus 3. And then the 4x stays out here. So the combining like terms, the 4x and the negative 9x. That's going to be negative 5x. And then the rest of it, we're going to have negative 3x squared out front and plus 3 in the back. So we put it in standard form. So we get negative 3x squared minus 5x plus 3. Sliding up, we have number 3, and we have new values for f of x, which is now 6x, and g of x, which is x squared plus 1. So we did this one in class, but it can be a little confusing because it says f times negative g of x. So we have x, or f, sorry, which is 6x, and we have to write the negative, because it's multiplying by a negative gx, so I'm going to put negative out front, and g of x, which is x squared plus 1. I'm going to have to use 2 parentheses. So I'm going to distribute the negative sign through. So I still have 6x over here. And then in my parentheses I'm going to have minus x squared minus 1. So now distributing 6x times negative x squared, negative 6x cubed minus 6x is our final answer. So that negative sign looks different, but it's just meaning it makes this here, makes that whole thing negative. And so we made those changes. Now the last one is a division problem, and when I have a division problem, I like to write it as a fraction. So 4 times g of x. So I'm going to do 4 and then g of x, which is x squared plus 1. Let's zoom in a little bit. And then on the bottom I have 2 times f of x, and f of x is 6x. So let's see what that is equal to. So on the top we have 4 times x squared plus 1, which is, well actually, what I would like to do is I'm going to simplify already. Cross out the 4, cross out the 2, the 4 becomes a 2, the 2 becomes a 1. So now I'm going to say 2 times x squared plus 1 is 2x squared plus 2 is equal over 6x. And we'll just leave it like that. You can reduce it more if you would like to, but we'll just leave it there. I see you can take out a 2 up top, so if you did that, you could take out a 2, and you'd still have the 2 times the x squared plus 1, and when it's over the 6x, you can reduce that to x squared plus 1 over 3x. So if you want to reduce it to that, that's fine. If not, I'm okay with that because we haven't really got to reducing fractions. Alright, so now let's flip over our page. Let's go to the back page. So we have more practice. And we're just going to say 3x squared. We have f of x plus g of x. So let's plug in these values. So we have 3x squared plus x is f of x. And then we say plus g of x, which is 5x plus 4. Do we have any like terms? Yes, we do. The x and the 5x. That's a 6x. Everything else, we leave it as 3x squared plus 6x plus 4. So that's our answer. We have f minus g of x using the same values. So we're going to have f, which is 3x squared plus x in parentheses, and we're going to subtract g of x now. So before we added it, now we're subtracting. And when we subtract, that gives us an extra step. So I'm going to rewrite it. 3x squared plus x, and then I have to distribute the minus sign. So minus 5x minus 4. So now once again I look at my like terms. The x's, x minus 5x is negative 4x, and we just leave the 3x squared out front and the minus 4 in the back. So that will give us our final answer. And then finally, we have two more practice problems. We have f of x is equal to 4x and g of x is 2x squared plus x. In this one, we want to multiply g of x times g of x. So that means we're going to do 2x squared plus x times 2x squared plus x. And I'm going to use the FOIL method. And that means first, outside, inside, last. So I'm going to multiply the first two terms. 2x squared times 2x squared is going to give me 4x to the fourth. Then I have the outside terms, 2x squared and x. That's going to give me plus 2x to the third. Then I have the inside terms, x and 2x squared, plus another 2x to the third. And then finally, last, x times x is plus x squared. So the ones that are the same, the x cubed and the x cubed. Excuse me. So then I'm going to rewrite my answer as 4x to the fourth plus 4x to the third plus x squared. So that's g of x times g of x. Our very last one is g divided by f of x. So like I did before, I'm going to make it into a fraction. And on the top is going to be my g, my function g, 2x squared plus x. And on the bottom is going to be my function f, which is just 4x. And since it's a fraction, and we haven't really done fractions, I'm going to show you what I would do. I would break it into two fractions. So my first one is going to be 2x squared. Well, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do something different. So my 2x squared plus x, I can rewrite that as x times 2x plus 1, and then it's still over 4x. And then if you look, the x's will cancel out, and so my final answer will be 2x plus 1 over 4. And that's my answer. Alright, and that is operations of functions.